From a lifestyle perspective for people who actually go into these cities or smart cities, as this capital will be, what will change for them from a lifestyle perspective? And what do you think? I love the way you articulated those 5 points around, and you ended with experience. And what would that experience be for these inhabitants, and how would that be different?
It's a good point you raised there, and I was very conscious when I said experience. Over the course of time, I've had various debates on this conversation about who moves to a brand new city. Like in Singapore, we have new towns where people move in a new town. As one premise that we always think about cities, what keeps me in a city? What kept me in London? What keeps me in Singapore? What keep me in other cities that I've lived in? A good portion of that is memories in a city. Memories create a sense of ownership of the city, and then the memories get translated to other people's memories, and it just builds up, and it creates that aura around that citizenry and the citizenship of a city. Those things do not exist in a brand new city. You got to create memories from scratch. And that's where one thing is attracting people to a new city, which would be probably easy, because if you think about in Indonesia, and if anyone's ever been to Indonesia, to have a city, this is the first city that the Indonesian government is planning from scratch. Normally people have moved into areas and then the planning authority goes in and draws a line around and say, okay, that's a new urban development. The first time they're planning something, and they're planning with that rigor. At least I hope we get that in terms of the implementation. A city which is going to be a 10-minute walking city, where it's going to be green, where you're not going to think about cars around you. Your kid will be able to walk very, very safely to a bus station and take a train and go somewhere where they want. Those are the things people aspire to as a basic. We think of it, we take it granted in Singapore, that aspect. And other cities want to aspire to that even better than what we get in Singapore, for that matter. So I have a feeling that attracting people to that basic tenets of livability aspect should not be an issue.
So Chintan, one of the things that I've picked here through our conversation is obviously there are a lot of factors being considered. Like there are things that you've talked about, elements of whether it's the biodiversity, whether it's the people, whether it's the demographics, and so many other factors that have gone into all the planning that you would do and the stakeholders would do. How do you actually process all that information? Because that's a lot of information. It can't just be sitting in your head.
There are a lot of people behind this, a team of close to 100 people, but in terms of geologists, engineers, structural engineers, to economists, to social scientists, all of those. And we actually, for example, when we are thinking about the new capital city, which is, as I said, 256,000 hectares, every hectare down to 1 square kilometer had enough data to say this is a land of so-and-so, the soil is so-and-so, that's how steep it is. That's where how many people live in that area, in all area. That's where the animal movements happen. That's where the bats are. And that's where all of those things were absolutely put in one thing for us to actually have those 20 to 25 indicators in place to be able to decide this is where we're going to touch nature. This is where we're going to touch the soil. This is where the buildings are going to be. All of those conversations have been through because there was absolutely backed with data, every decision making.
I wanted to get a sense from you, like, are there other cities that are looked at and seen as the template to consider when nations or governments are thinking about adapting new ways of either reshaping their cities or building new cities?
I would not say there is one city that's perfect. So when we are thinking about cities, we always think about aspects within the city or projects within the city that have really, really worked well. And that learning can come from any city in the world, to be honest. Singapore's done a fantastic job in digitization. And I think that digital thing, and we'll talk a bit about that later, but I think especially post-COVID, they've really managed to change that in terms of accessibility and data and connectivity of people. And there's something that other cities should learn. And I know Singapore is a special case because it's a city state, and it's difficult when other cities in a state have to think about how to do that. But it's something still to admire. The best example I could think about is Medellin in Colombia. The
Hmm.
very simple fact, the Medellin actually is in a valley, and you have the less well off on the top, and the more well off you are, you actually closer to the valley down there, and that's where the most industries and everything and work is. I think what the mayor did a fantastic job was literally getting cable cars connecting the top to the bottom, basically connecting jobs and opportunities to people. That
Right.
just transformed the crime rates in the city. The mayor spent huge amount of money building beautiful public library buildings. And believe it or not, the crime rate around the public libraries and the precinct has gone down. People never put any graffiti on the building because people are proud of those public infrastructure. And the pride is important when you want your city to be considered as a city, a successful city.
I had an opportunity to, I was part of a session where I spoke, run by JTC, and it was really around PDD, the Punggol Digital District. And it was quite amazing that we actually have something like that coming up in Singapore, where one, it's a multi-use development, but then they've actually thought about everything, and everything is connected and everything is ubiquitous. So for a citizen, they've actually looked at it from the city element. That's where I wanted to touch on the technology piece, where they've actually changed the entire architecture of how all of these various multi-agencies, utility providers all come together through, through an architecture that's kind of unified and that gives one experience to the citizens. How easy or difficult do you think that is? Is that more of a technology play, or is that a result of all the things that you described that actually go into building a great city or a development?
I think it's a great example of the success of thinking about what the future needs or what the future population needs for the enhancement. Probably this is where I should talk about. We all love these things, 6Cs, 3Ds, 4Ds, 7Ds, whatever. But I really believe in the 3Ds, which I'm going to touch on, which is whenever I'm thinking about the future of any of our cities, I think about three things, which is decarbonization, digitization, and disclosure. And I'll touch on disclosure, which probably is the most important D for me right now. But we just cannot get away from not thinking about our cities in terms of where the digital and the physical come together, in terms of operating in any possible way. People need that for our day-to-day needs, but more so every bit of infrastructure needs that. And the reason why digital is really good is coming back to a sustainability conversation, is where the disclosure part comes. When I say disclosure, what I mean is we really do not know how much carbon we use in our lives. We really do not know the table that I'm sitting in, or the computer that I have in me, how much carbon has gone into make that computer for me, and which I'm using right now. If we are able to measure every bit of that, disclose that measurement, then we really truly can think about what the baseline is with which we can go move forward. So the more we have such kind of developments where things are digitally measured in every possible thing that we do. So beyond just the lifestyle choices of providing people the basic sense of internet that we can do these kind of calls and work, but also how much is the light being used, how much is the energy being generated, how much of the energy is being used. It will only help us to think really about our personal carbon footprints, but also as a society, but also as a planet.
Even from a commercial standpoint, or just from a business lens, given that the generation that's coming in are now much more aware of, the values that we're seeking as a society, and there's a lot more information available to them. Do you not think that, given that this entire set of talent and consumers are going to be coming in into the workforce and into the economy in the next 10 to 15 years, that everyone should be thinking about getting this right?
Absolutely. And that's why I think that it gives me an absolute push when I listen to the next generation, because as we were talking about earlier, that the cities where we are designing is for that, is for those users. The users are going to be very, very different.
Yeah.
And this is what we tell So one thing is designing a capital city for a government because they have a very clear government mandate. Southeast Asia is unique because we have huge developments that are built in this part of the world by private developers. And we have to work with the private developers in thinking about those aspects as well. The beyond profit, the people you want to attract to these cities are either the companies who are not going to move to your new development if it's not net zero or reaching to net zero, or the next generation is not going to buy a family home into your building out there. Is because they are way more conscious than any of us of where they're going to live, how are they going to live, and what they're going to wear, and where are the clothes coming from. And if we cannot touch those lines right now, then 6 or 7 years from now, we won't be successful. So we absolutely got to be conscious of those future subscribers who are currently already subscribers a lot of other things in life, and we've got to learn from them.
You know how when you build a really nice fancy building, people always leave a mark somewhere. What did you leave on the city? Have you put a mark there that you go back and you say, oh, I'm going to come back and see this? And have you ever considered that? If you haven't, maybe it's not too late.
Well, believe it or not, there are a lot of discussions that we have when we're planning or designing our cities, and there are always few things that you think like, let's try this. Let's put that small, an example, a small people's park in that area, and would love to see in 10 years from now if people are going to use it the way that we thought they would use it. And it'll be even more surprising that in 10 years from now, people use it completely differently than what we thought they would use it, because we actually don't even know how 10 years from now people are going to use public spaces. And those are the only ways we can actually think about how our marks would be that, oh yeah, that street that I design as a pedestrian street is superly working well because we decided to put that one small nursery there. And that just seamlessly worked with families and parents coming together.
I'm actually really glad that we've had this discussion. You know, the role of technology in shaping these cities and shaping urban infrastructure and built environment is so critical. But I think you just put so many different layers on it today that gives us a better understanding of what all goes into it. The technology is just a connector, but eventually it's all about the people that are going to live there. So really appreciate it. There'll be a set of people who will not have the ability to move, right? The aging population, for example. Do you feel like that gets addressed in the planning? And do you think that there will be an opportunity to make it inclusive?
I actually think that aging population will move, because I think that the people who are working in Asia has a lot of the still holds the thing about families living together, like grandparents, kids, people working. And we think that if those 200,000 odd people who, as the president said, are going to move in the next 2 years, they are going to move with their families, which includes parents, grandparents, and kids growing together. All statistics say that when people are in cleaner air and in much more shaded, the heat island effect is reduced, the temperatures don't go warp up too much, which is how we design our cities. Living in nature, having more green around you, you hear the sound of birds and the sound of cars, improve the quality of your life as you age, because these things affect you more. This may become a place where actually people want to grow old already, not the next generation. So that would be a pure success if actually people of all generations think, all ages think that that's a place where I want to grow old, or that's a place I want to create my memories as I grow old.
I would love to understand in another conversation, I hope we have that soon, on how a firm like yours actually uses the data to actually bring it all together. I think that is where the future is. You know, we're going to be getting into not just a digital economy, but it's actually a data economy, because that's what's going to power the entire economy going forward. So I think it'll be interesting to see how all of these pieces come together. So I'd love to invite you again and have a more deeper conversation around that. So hope to have that soon as well.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks for that.